I don't think we talk about Polymarket enough. I've been kind of seeing more of this rumbling in the background, but this is starting to become a place where you can place bets on certain types of outcomes. And this is really looking to be like one of the premier places to go and try to find out whether something is the truth or not. You can look at this particular one. Will RFK drop out before September? I mean, this was sitting at like rock solid zero. All of a sudden, there's rumblings on X that this might actually be the case. We were having an internal discussion about it. I pulled up Polymarket, and lo and behold, here we go. It's now gone at 50%. So the rumors seem to be a decent chance that this is likely to happen. Rusty, you brought this first to my knowledge. You just saw it on X, right?
Yeah, I just saw a post on X like usual. I was scrolling through my profile on my feed and just came across it. And I didn't know how much credibility to give to it, but I thought it was an interesting statement.
Yeah, and Lucas, as we were, oh, wait a minute, oh, here we go. So if you want to make money, here you can go bet against this.
Buy the dip. Buy the dip.
Well, look at this. Watch. Here we just got a post on this like immediately 2 minutes ago. Fake news from Robert F. Kennedy. He says nope.
Oh,
straight from the horse's mouth. Look at that. You can't break news faster than on this show. This show's giving it to you straight, right, as it happens.
Well, maybe others who were speculating on that were reading other tea leaves than Bobby Kennedy's. And I love
look at how fast this is falling. Look at this in real time. 17 cents up to this is how you make money right here. You buy it down here, you spread a bunch of fake news on, then cash in on Polymarket, and then bam, this thing is back down to nothing. Like there it is, boys, right there. You see it live in real time, debunked.
I wish it said before the end of September. I think this rumor must be in the wake of the Democrats falling behind Kamala Harris, and I think that's the story that spike tells us, is that there were a bunch of people who were paying attention who thought there was an outsized chance that the Democrats would be figuring out some way to adopt Bobby and his well-established campaign in the wake of Biden dropping out of that race. But it looks like, and what I would take away from this is looks like Kamala will be the nominee coming out of the Democratic National Convention. Is there another poll for that, Grant? Could I be making money elsewhere on Polymarket?
All right, I guess I can look.
Kamala for DNC nominee.
Can I interject here and ask, as a French person, why are we not seeing another challenger for the Democratic nominee? I mean, that's the question that's been on my mind the past few days. Like, why is no one challenging or making it seem like we have at least different opinions, or I don't know? Why aren't we seeing a challenger?
I think a big part of why we're not seeing a challenger, and this has been discussed by Bobby Kennedy particularly, and we saw it happen with Bernie, is that the process in the Democratic Party for picking a nominee for president is captured. It is not something that is allowed to proceed through what would seem to be the normal means. So when Bobby Kennedy first wanted to run for president, he earnestly tried to operate within the confines of the Democratic Party. Eventually got to the point where he realized that they were not going to let him run, that Biden had already been chosen, had been anointed, and left in disgust. And that was sort of the first thing he announced when he said he was going to run as an independent. And he said, they're not even letting me participate. They're not giving me a chance. And if you look at what happened with Bernie Sanders' campaign, essentially the same thing happened to him. He had a groundswell of excitement. like I had an opportunity to participate in a few events where they were trying to get him to be the nominee. I haven't seen energy like that at any political thing. So it was just absolutely mind-boggling how many people were behind Bernie Sanders, and for him not to get the nomination was just crazy. So I think it is entirely because that process is pretty well captured. And
And
so
I would call it a machine grab. Let's throw in before Bernie Sanders, Howard Dean, and we can continue to go back through the history of the Democratic Party and select populist candidates who the machine made sure did not reach the nomination. But there's also a part of this narrative, I think, is a mistaken understanding that the Democratic Party is about democracy. I mean, the Democratic Party used to be the Democratic Republican Party, started by Thomas Jefferson. It was about states' rights before the Republicans claimed to be about states' rights. And not only that, but we are all well aware that we have an electoral system for the nomination of the president of the United States. And despite how many times Americans repeat and tell the world and tell ourselves that we have a president elected by popular vote, it's not true. And I mean, even our senators were once elected by the state legislatures, and the state legislatures and the governor of the state were supposed to have an outsized voice in the selection of the executive of the United States. And in a way they still do, but we ignore often that reality. So
wait, Lucas, you got to look at this. Look at what Kennedy said in his other tweet or in his other post.
okay, well, I told you, I think he's
No, but
sincere.
look at there's fighting words in the last sentence. The DNC nominee. He he doesn't even acknowledge that it's going to be Harris because he's saying this isn't done. Like these guys know what's up, man.
Well, and they can go into that convention. This is also why that's why the parties hold conventions. There's other things that we make false equations, and the political parties are not part of government. They integrate into government, or select people who will be elected into government, but they can make their own rules. The people who go to and make up that Democratic convention are going to make their own rules, and maybe they don't pick Kamala Harris. Again, this will only make the Democratic National Convention more interesting, but we have a guest in today. I don't want to dwell too much on Bobby Kennedy and betting on political facts, or political outcomes. But I do love the notion of this Polymarket site, and I may create a profile there and start engaging in a grant. If I do, I'll post my results unashamedly.
I can't wait to see your crypto portfolio rise based on your ability to get things right on Polymarket, especially being an early vote. God, I should have bet against that Bobby when I knew I was right. All right, well, yeah, let's welcome Alex to the stage. So Alex is somebody I've known for a very long time. I have been hoping that he would join us for one of these conversations, and who knows, maybe he'll join us for some in the future if he has a lot of fun. Alex is a current resident of the great nation of France and has great knowledge and insight into the politics over on that side of the ocean. Is also great student of the United States and U.S. history. So I thought it'd be fun to have him join us for a conversation. So Alex, yeah, welcome to the stage.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great, but I don't know if I'm a great student of political science in France, but I enjoy talking about politics and talking about geopolitics, which I hold a degree on. on, and yeah, the world is not coming undone, but there are a few things going on right now that are quite interesting to see, very interesting to watch, definitely. And yeah, the US is one of the biggest election that I'm definitely interested in. And there are a few things that, yeah, I do not quite understand. And I've been trying to understand your electoral process for a while now. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the populist vote does not count at all, which is quite surprising, to be honest. But that's your
So,
that's
and
your
I think one of
process.
yeah, and I think one of the first things, that we had talked about is that over where you're at, you haven't heard much about Bobby Kennedy at all, right? Like he's been almost completely
No,
absent from any reporting, right?
no, not much. I think I came across a few articles. That's it, but they were very specialized. Yet to go look for the information. You might find an article saying, "Oh, look, there's someone from JFK's family that is kind of a on the outside." You might find an article about that, but honestly, no. It's pretty much all been about Biden, Trump. There's a lot of fear that Trump might be coming back. So it's an election that the European Union is very, very, very much interested in. Very
Alex,
much, yeah.
you say fear that Trump might be coming back. How come?
Yeah.
What was the experience of France with the first Trump administration, and why fear now?
Well, it's not that. France is a bit different on the whole thing because they have a whole different position on their relationship with the US, and it started with the Charles De Gaulle, if you remember him, from the Second World War. That and every president ever since has been kind of holding the same position and the same relationship kind of with the US, which is we're friends with the US, we trade a lot, and there is a fear about the market, there is a fear about taxes. I think Trump during his first mandate wanted to tax wine or something like that. So there is this fear that it might upset the market, but the whole relationship is, for France, it's about being quite independent from the US, which is not exactly the same position that Germany, for example, has regarding the US. That is very dependent on the US military speaking. So for us, there was kind of first, we didn't quite believe that Trump had won. It was a kind of a very, I don't know, surprise, shock, I guess. And then we
But it wasn't a
of
surprise. It wasn't a surprise to you, though, right, Alex? Because I remember when you and I were talking about this, and you said he's going to be the next president. And I think I bet against that,
well,
right? And you were right.
I said that because I said that. Yeah, I thought, and well, I still think that it's all about money. It's all about money. It's all about, and Trump won the first time because he put the money strategically. He won the few key states, the few key big electors that he needed to, and I think, and even them were surprised. I mean, there are a lot of reports from the result, how the election night went down during Trump's campaign. I mean, they were shocked to have won. They couldn't believe it. But still, France was me. That was just me saying, well, I think this guy did it the right way, and he played the game right, and so he's going to win. But overall, in France, the media thought that Hillary was going to be the first female president, the first U.S. female president.
That
honestly.
was that was definitely the feeling on, in America. I felt like that was going to happen, and I agree. The look of shock on the faces of the people in that room when Trump won,
Yeah.
they were surprised, and I would even maybe even say the word aghast that they had won. Many people were like, "Oh no, what are we going to do now? How are we going to govern this country?"
Yeah. 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 Yeah, they were surprised. I read a report of Jared just coming undone, and you're like, "What are we gonna do now? We're not prepared." That's what the general feeling was, and you got the feeling that for the European leaders, they didn't know how to react at first, but they kind of quickly regrouped. And what's interesting is during the first mandate, the European Union started to talk about being more autonomous from the US. We got a lot of talks. There were a lot of speeches made by the former German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, that said, well, Europe needs to take fate into its own hand. That was the general feeling that we need to do. We cannot let Trump do his thing. So it was kind of like put aside, and there was a kind of a strange unity. And then, he lost. Biden came, and there was this huge relief from most of the European leaders saying, "Oh well, okay, good. We can go back to how things were done before." And so France is kind of fighting against this current on that front, and Emmanuel Macron, our president, has been repeating the same thing. He said, "Well, no, just because Biden is president, it's not going to change. It should not change our position. It should not change the fact that we need to be more autonomous." And it's, but he's being kind of the lone wolf on that front, I would say.
Alex, you mentioned
I don't know.
earlier that to you it's all about the money, and I chuckled because, and you brought up Charles de Gaulle also. Charles de Gaulle was president of France whenever we started whenever we got together and created the international monetary system we have today that's based on the dollar, to the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. In 1944, we create the Bretton Woods system, and France was always the most wary of the United States role in the creation of the Bretton Woods system. And it was Charles de Gaulle and the finance minister under him, Estang, I think his name was, who coined the term exorbitant privilege and warned the rest of the countries of the world to be wary of the United States, the possibility that we could lie about the amount of currency that we had created. So France has always played a role as being the watchdog for the inflation of the United States dollar with regard to our gold reserves. And even the narrative that we have in the United States is that Nixon took the United States off gold. Well, we couldn't be more wrong. What had happened was, since from 1944 until 1970, the United States had been inflating the amount of dollars, or just creating dollars and sending them to the various countries of the world and not admitting that number that we had created.
And it was France that called bullshit on that, right? They said,
Absolutely. And it was the same president, Charles de Gaulle, who said to Nixon, or said to the United States, "We have all these dollars that you sent us. You promised that you would not, you were not inflating the number of dollars. So you of course have the gold to give to us for the amount of dollars that we had. Please get that ready at Fort Knox, and we'll be sending a ship to collect our gold so we can bring it back to France." And that was at the point that Nixon's closed the gold window, and he said, "Oops, we had printed a few more dollars than it just got a little bit out of hand. What are we going to do about that?" And that was the Nixon shock of 1971. And it was France's eye that that called us into account for what we had been doing to the rest of the world. But go and Alex, welcome back. I don't know if your audio is better. I hope it is. But I was just giving a little background to the role that France has played historically in calling the United States out for abusing the privilege that we have of supplying dollars to the rest of the world.
Policing U.S. monetary policy.
That's what they do.
The gendarmes of U.S. monetary policy.
You're right about De Gaulle calling bullshit. So I was trying to say before that if you take a look at all the French presidents, starting from De Gaulle to right now with Emmanuel Macron, and if you and no matter where they are on the political spectrum, be it on the left or the right, they have had the same position regarding France and regarding the dollar, and it's quite interesting to. I always thought that was an interesting fact that they haven't changed at all since De Gaulle. They haven't changed at all.
Well,
it's the same position.
Very true. And what's very interesting after the Nixon shock, everyone froze for quite some time. We endured stagflation in the United States and various places in the world. But what everyone quickly discovered was they were addicted to easy money. And even the leaders of Europe thought, well, it greases the wheels and it quite literally passes the buck. And it gives us political outs to be relying on an inflationary monetary system. And so rather than recreate the world exchange system, everyone just started to participate in the lie. And Alex, I asked you earlier about what the current relationship between France and Germany is, because as the situation where the United States was printing dollars to give out to the rest of the world, and especially Europe, it also became apparent that we needed to be engaging in more commerce. And the United States actually forged the relationships that would become the European Economic Community and the European Union. And we did so by using corporations that were based out of the United States, mining corporations that had bought all the mines along the border shared by Germany and France. So could you pick up maybe with where, and I ask this with regards to like the conflict that we see in Ukraine and Germany's reliance on Russian natural gas, because relying on that Russian natural gas instead of the coal mined on the border shared with Germany and France changes the political landscape.
Well, it has definitely changed the role of Germany inside the European Union. It has definitely changed not just Germany, I would say France as well, because you have to understand we are, of course, and I've said this before, Germany and France are, I'd say, the main motors behind the European Union, definitely. But we have to remind ourselves, and this is, I think, where maybe France and even Germany has always been in the wrong, is that we are 27. We're not 2, we are 27. And our allies on the eastern side and even in the middle of Europe, have been telling us for years, well, guys, we have a problem. We have a problem because to us, Russia is the enemy. We are afraid of Russia. We are afraid of what they might do because they're trying to keep their influence over them. And so they've been telling us that for years, and we've been kind of ignoring it. France by saying, well, we should keep an open communication, open channel. And that was particularly seen during the first months of the war, where Emmanuel Macron, the French president, was routinely saying, well, we need to keep talking with Russia. We need to keep talking with Russia. There's an open communication. I've talked with Putin. And so that was France. There was kind of this arrogance that we should keep an open channel of communication, and that France was the one to do it. And as far as Germany was concerned, they were kind of put down a peg or two, I'd say, because they kind of ignored all the warnings from our Eastern allies and said, well, we hear you, but we need gas, and we need gas that is cheap. So we're going to build a lot of gas pipelines in order to join, to go from Russia to our territory. So it's kind of a, I don't want to say funny situation, but it's definitely a reversal. Germany has been also, I don't want to say unrest, but there is definitely not as stable politically on the inside as they were a couple of years ago when Merkel was chancellor. There's a rise of far-right extremists with the AfD, which is the acronym for Alternative für Deutschland. We have the same problem all across Europe with the rise of far-right extremists. Even in France, I'm pretty sure you've heard about Marine Le Pen and her party. And these far-right extremists have been kind of laying on the fact that they hold a, let's say, not less than genuine relationship with democracy, and kind of a covert relationship with dictatorship countries such as Russia. So it's kind of a, I don't know, I'd say the whole European Union is definitely changing. As I mentioned before, there was this wake up during the first Trump mandate where people were thinking, well, we need to unite. Then this relief when Biden came, and then the war kind of changed everything, where one of the big winners of that war is definitely NATO and the US. They're the big winners because we're not as united as we should be, which is what France wants. Say that, and we are all of our Eastern allies, Poland, Estonia. I've been requesting and I've been putting in orders for U.S. military resources, ammunitions, tanks, missiles, the whole thing. So the war is definitely changing something, and in Germany, it has been making it, I want to say unstable. It was unstable politically, and even in France. I mean, the whole thing in France right now. I don't know if you've seen a few articles about what's happening in France. I mean, it's not exactly stable politically.
Well, we've definitely seen the reports in quite some time of fascist, far right, autocracy.
Well, wait, are you talking about where Macron couldn't put together the government? Like he tried to put together a government? Yeah. So what's happening was,
so when he was first elected in 2017, so the way, I don't know, well, I'm pretty sure you know how our democracy, our electoral vote is or works, but in France, basically, you're doing, there's this first turn where all the candidates are welcome. and then the two main ones go on for a second turn. And so on the second turn, we had Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, who is the far right leader, I'd say, a party leader. And so Macron appealed to kind of the population by saying, well, we're not going to let the far right win. We need to unite and band together. And so that works. He got a huge majority at the equivalent to you would be the House of Representatives. And so he had his own government. So it works. 5 years later, because a mandate for a French president is 5 years. 5 years later, he runs again, and again, second turn, he is confronted with Marine Le Pen once more. And so, again, he appeals to the fact that we cannot let the far right win. We need to have what he called a Republican front. A Republican United Front. And so he won again. He had this time he did not. He had a majority, but not enough to pass laws however he wanted in Parliament. And so it kind of went on for a while until last June, on the 9th of June, we had the European elections, and the far right won. They won big. So following that victory, Emmanuel Macron decided to disband the parliament, which he's allowed to do as the president. And so we had new elections, and the results are, it's chaos, to be honest, because nobody has a majority. We have three blocks now, the center, the left, the right, and nobody wins. So we have a government that cannot operate. We have a French president that does not want to kind of acknowledge the results. And this kind of political instability is not good. Not good for France, not good for the European Union. So this is where we are right now.
Well, so where does the alt-right, well, maybe two questions. What is the general feeling with regards to the war in Ukraine, the proxy war between Russia and the United States taking place in Ukraine? What is the general feeling in France with regards to that, with regards to NATO? And then what are the policies, or what's the line coming from Marine Le Pen and the right?
Well, for a long time, we have been saying that Marine Le Pen and his party are in collusion with Russia. And if you take a look at public records, you'll see that they have had a loan from a Russian bank to be part of the French election. So they took this loan from a Russian bank, and there was kind of a suspicious on that front. And they've been kind of very lenient regarding Russia. Some of the party members have been more than I would say even more than not generous, but kind of openly admiring Russia. So that's been kind of a problem on that front. The rest of the political parties are quite united on that decision on that front, and they have mentioned and they've repeatedly said that we need to help Ukraine. Recently, the far right has been changing the tune, I would say, by saying that, we definitely Russia's the aggressor. We need to help Ukraine, but we need, we're not, if we are elected, if we're running the country, we're not going to send so much tanks for them. Tanks, munitions, weapons are kind of a red line that they don't want to cross. And so it would be some people are saying that it would be kind of helping Russia on that front. Like, oh, we're helping Ukraine, but well, we're going to send you maybe helmets and Kevlars, and that's it. So it's not it's not ideal.
Well, we hear also of Germany's reliance on Russian gas to keep themselves warm in the winter. How does France keep itself warm in the winter?
Well, we've been so it's kind of very complex because we have a nuclear park site, a huge nuclear park site with, I think, 27 installations in France, and so we've been running that.
Okay, so France uses nuclear power. Also going back to the United States creation of the Bretton Woods international exchange system, we intentionally excluded Russia from sitting at the table.
Wait, let's not blow past this nuclear thing. I hadn't been apprised of this. This is okay. So is this a somewhat relatively recent development that you guys have brought so much nuclear power online, and this is different from Germany too, because Germany shut off all their nuclear power. So Germany shuts off their nuclear reactors, and they're heavily dependent on Russian gas. But French sort of embraced nuclear wholesale, doesn't care about Russian gas as much. Is this a divide within EU politics?
Oh, definitely. It's a definitely not only a divide, but it's a problem because so the way it works with electricity is France is basically producing too much. So because of European laws, what's going on is that we distribute, we give some of this electricity kind of back to our partners. Well, we distribute that kind of electricity to our partners, and because everybody kind of share the same, how to explain this, kind of share the same network, we get some of our own electricity back, if that makes sense. And we've been paying much more than if it was just us giving it to our French citizens. So it's been kind of a huge debate and a huge deal inside of the European Union and also by political parties in France by saying, well, I mean, what's going on here? We're producing a lot of electricity. We should have enough to get by. And instead of that, we're giving it to some our partners who are selling it back to us for a much higher price. And this is completely ridiculous. But this is Europe, I guess. So, I mean, the whole nuclear thing is we have a huge park of nuclear sites in France where, but some of them are, because we were the leaders, I'd say we were the leaders on the nuclear front for many years after the war. And after the 1990s, we kind of abandoned the whole thing. So it's been 30 years left, and we're going back at it finally recently. But Germany has cut off and has shut down the last nuclear site recently. So that's where we're at right now.
Well, and Germany took those steps after the Fukushima disaster in Japan.
Did they do that as a reaction to Fukushima, or I thought that they had that plan in place for
100%
before that?
Yeah, no, it was an absolute reaction, and I mean.
Well, wait a minute. Let's ask Alex. Like, do you think that was a reaction to Fukushima, or was the German policy in place before that?
No, there was definitely a reaction after Fukushima, because Fukushima was 2011, right? 2012, maybe. Can't remember.
Yeah.
I think I was around that time anyway. And so they started to shut down. They didn't shut down the last one until 2019, I think, something like that, and there was definitely a reaction, and the Green Party in Germany has been rising definitely since that time, and Merkel and her party were definitely on board with the idea that we need to shut down the nuclear sites and go with the renewable energy plan, which is a disaster, exactly, because they didn't launch enough, and they're actually going back in some places in Germany. I've seen that they're going back to carbon, to coal. Sorry, not carbon, coal. They're going back to producing coal in order to keep warm in the winter.
Well, as I see the different responses to reliance on energy and generating electricity themselves and using technological solutions like nuclear, the route that France has gone with regards to the route that Germany has gone. I think back to the different experiences they had in World War I, World War II, even before that, their experiences in colonization, because France and Great Britain had access to a lot more colonies, and Spain also, colonies all across the world. They were able to live off those colonies in such a way. Germany did not get to do so. And I would say that Germany has a history of putting more faith from the things that they've learned on that path, and putting more faith with trade, and maybe looking to Russia, despite the propaganda issued by the United States. I mean, when we created the international trade system based on the dollar, we intentionally left off Russia. And it's interesting to hear, your recounting of the phrasing of the different perspectives in French politics, and I hear, anti-democratic, and that is the propaganda of the United States, going out and picking countries that are on our system and saying, this is a democrat. These people are moving towards democracy, and those people who don't join our system, we say, oh, they're autocratic. Those are fascists.
Well, that's the. I think I can't. You might help me on this one. I cannot remember who said that. I think it was Gorbachev that said that after the Cold War, that the US had lost its greatest enemy, and it's been true. It's been true. I mean, you've been searching for a way to maintain the top spot, so much fighting against maybe the remnants of Russia, that you didn't see China coming. Definitely. I mean, to me, it feels that way. And also I feel like it's the propaganda is gearing up the next thing. It's going to be. It's not so much about. I don't know if I'd say autocratic or democracy, but maybe it is. Maybe it is the free world against dictatorships. That's the next fight that the US is promoting. At least to me, it feels that way.
Well, it also leads me to wonder as to the narrative with church and religion, with especially the far right. Is there an association with religious principles in the far right movement? Because part of this narrative of democracy has been a quote unquote separation of church and state, but I don't know how that holds. What's religion like in France today?
Well, France is different. Christianity is still a big thing, but it's not the biggest. We definitely have a huge part of Muslims. The Jewish community is less and less and doesn't represent much. You might find some Protestant, but I'm not sure. Actually, maybe in the north, maybe in the east, definitely of France, but they don't represent much. Religion is I don't want to say in in France in particular, to answer to your question, in France in particular, there's definitely Christianity being the number one, but we've seen that there are there are less and less people believing, less and less people going to church or being actively religious, whereas you see a lot of an increase in the Muslim faith on that front. A lot more Muslims each year. So it's still very much Christian land, but I would not say that it might remain in 30, 40 years ago, from now. So France is kind of I don't say not an exception, but to go back to your question about the far right and religion, you kind of see if you take a look at Poland, Hungary, if you take a lot of mostly the eastern side of the European Union, you'll see that there's a strong link between their leaders and religion, and most of them are Orthodox. I'd say are definitely Orthodox, and so they share that with Russia, but they have their different churches, and we have this very much, let's say, this movement, this surge of conservatism from political leader. We have I don't know how to explain this. We're going back to kind of teaching moral, to teaching how to behave, or how people should behave, and we're going back to some of the things, especially women rights. So it's definitely more dominant, this relationship, or visible, I would say. It's definitely more visible on the eastern side of Europe. France, it's not that visible. I don't think Germany is as well, but I might be wrong on that one.
In the history of the United States and before the United States, much of the conflict that arose between the colonies of Spain and France and England, Great Britain, and the UK, had to do with notions of religion. Even our acquirement of New France was Napoleon, who was leading that Protestant sort of emergent wave against the Catholics that were tied to the
regime.
Yes, to the monarchy. And I think part of what we see here too is in the longer arc is France on the heels of the American Revolution also has its own revolution and starts a republic, which I find interesting, where we had a notional union of republics, but very quickly was federalized. We see the emergence of a nation, this concept of nation that we have today. So in that I expect to see more and more religions that are tied to regional boundaries, which an allegiance to a god, gives people the ability to move around as opposed to being bound to the land, which is how that feudal system operated.
But you have to remember that in France we have a law that puts religion on equal footing. I mean, the separation of church and state in 1901 in France was gave as a result this kind of the church cannot keep its privileges, and we're not referring we're not referring to us as being a Christian nation anymore. It's not, and we have very different laws saying that, for example, in in school, you cannot wear any distinctive signs of your religious, of your religion, I would say. Of your religion. So it's funny because despite this law, I mean, if you take a look at what happened in France in 2015 during the attacks in Paris, I mean, one of the first thing that happened afterwards was a meeting of leaders to pray in a church. I mean, and this is kind of a different. I don't know. I always thought that it was maybe not 2015. Maybe it might have been after the 9/11 attack. But there was definitely one of those two where all the leaders in France just kind of met inside of church to pray, which is crazy to think about.
Well, I think this notion of separation of church and state is a slippery slope, and though it seems everyone says that it comes from the United States, we have no separation of church and state.
Oh no,
we have an amendment to our Constitution that bars the federal government from the establishment of the religion, but the original notion was that various colonies had a religion designated to them, and that was a novel idea coming out of Europe, where there had been a dual system of Catholicism and the Holy Roman Empire and the various principalities that were associated with it. And you have a very interesting sort of whatever happened with Henry VIII and his creation of his copy of the Catholic religion, but that was not this Protestant movement of read the Bible yourself and make your own moral decisions. So, and even I often think in terms of what is the true what is the true expression of religion, of money, of faith in others, and it's what's your discount rate when you give a loan of money. And that France has had, such a keen eye on the American, on the lies put forth by Americans with regards to how many dollars that we're printing, and also acting as the mediator between Germany and Great Britain and the southern countries of the European Union whenever it comes to a fight over who owes what there. I sometimes wonder if we're going to see the fallout in the devolution of these economic unions that we've made with regards to what people think is right in the forgiveness of debt and the charging of interest. Which you mentioned the Muslim movement or the Islamic movement or influence in France too, and they have very different prescriptions with regards to how banking is done. So to me, that's where the rubber really hits the road.
I don't have any crystal ball on this one to see the future. But you mentioned a lot about money, and there is, and I think you're going to see. You might want to watch out for that next year. The euro. I don't know if you read anything about that.
No, what's the euro? I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, you've pretty heard of, the China has been trying to have a digital currency, right?
Yeah, the digital yuan. Yeah,
digital yuan. Well, it's going to be the digital equivalent, digital euro. that's pretty much what it's going to be. I think it's gonna come out next year. I think maybe sooner.
Is it blockchain based?
Yeah. They've been trying to.
What blockchain are they
put it forth. They're trying to put it forth. I've read a few things about it. It's relatively new. I mean, I've only read about it in a very few articles on specialized website. Really, like, kind of very specialized. Nobody in the big news media has been mentioning it. So it's kind of relatively new, but you might want to look into that.
We'll definitely be looking into it. We knew there was movement towards digital currencies around the world.
Yeah, look at this. You guys so this digital euro. So I'm just kind of like clicking around on this from the European Central Bank. This is kind of saying no on the Bitcoin side, and then you contrast this with and I didn't even really get a chance to pull this up, but I had it on the screen for a minute, where you've got Kennedy saying, "Hey, I think the U.S. should be wholeheartedly embracing Bitcoin." You've got Donald Trump saying Bitcoin should be a strategic asset, and then you see, here, essentially the European Central Bank saying no to Bitcoin completely. So, and they want to make their own thing here. This is interesting. We may have to dig into this a bit deeper. But this seems to be a pretty big divide between the U.S. and the EU, especially if Trump gets into office or if Bobby Kennedy gets into office.
Well, I mean, it's new, so I don't know. I cannot expand too much on that because it's relatively new. Don't want to say anything stupid, definitely. And I've been I honestly came across just a couple articles a couple of weeks ago, so it's quite new. They're kind of talking about it. But I feel as if it's part of a larger movement. There are a few laws that have been passed down in the European Parliament regarding, for example, the Digital Service Act, asking to put the data to stock the data on European soil. There has been this huge war between the European Union and Facebook and, Meta, the big social networks, for years now. I think France, or I think it was maybe the European Union as a whole, threatened to shut down, I think it was Instagram, for a while because they did not comply with the European laws.
Well, this is super interesting, just to tie this into something we've talked about before. Look at this. So apparently, since a decision hasn't been taken on what distributed ledger technology they might use, I wonder if Chia's in the running for this. What blockchain could they possibly be considering, and who's at the table in these discussions?
They might build their own.
Well, we may have a chance to ask somebody about this shortly. So this is super glad you brought this up, Alex. This is great. Hey guys, we're at the top of the hour. Are we gonna run a long show today, or are we gonna wrap this?
I'm hoping for a long one. What about you, Alex?
I'm fine.
I'm following you guys.
Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, this is great.
No problems.
As we talk about in the United States and elsewhere around the world, moving to crypto, Grant and Rusty are very used to my take on this, Alex, but I am much more interested in, or I caution many people in replacing the specie that we have based our currencies on. Replacing gold with Bitcoin and keeping it a currency is one thing, but it would seem to me the real problem that we've had is the ability of nation states to stretch the amount of paper or that they print, or currency that they create over some imaginary hard asset. So, and to that, we have seen movements towards, prior to the introduction of crypto, or this notion that you could have Bitcoin as being one of those species in a basket. It seemed to be that the world was moving to carbon, and I know that the European Union has carbon mandates that participates in the even the Paris Accords of 2004, et cetera, et cetera. And this also seems to be what we've been moving the IMF and the World Bank standings to. So, any thoughts about the state of carbon markets and the possibility of issuing monies that are based on how much carbon different nations have sequestered as the species that backs their currency?
I don't have a firm position on this, but I'll say this: the carbon taxing was a good idea at the first, and we've seen because it was moving towards the, I believe, was a good, good idea. That was a good idea at the start, but what quickly came up was that the fact that we had all these big companies that just went around it. I mean, the whole thing is, well, there's a cap on how much carbon emission you can emit for the whole year. So you think, well, it's a good idea, but there's a loophole inside that tax that said, and if you go overboard, you can pay, or you can buy the share of carbon emission from other companies, that kind of thing. So we got a carbon trade. And so, I mean, the whole idea was fine, but it's, in the end, I mean, we're going back to it. Money wins.
Well, having an electronic currency might ameliorate some of those, or get rid of some of those options. If it binds the corporations to the carbon asset and doesn't allow them alternatives of swapping out and going to species or currencies that are based on gold and silver and other things.
I don't know if that's going to be possible. I mean, if you take a look at it's the same as the US. I mean, the European Parliament is the same as the US. You got lobbying. So much lobbying has been done. So I don't know.
Very true. It also speaks to sort of notions of supply, and it's interesting that Germany again is sticking to their, I don't know if it's a good phrase, sticking to their guns with regards to not turning to nuclear, as opposed to France, and France with an energy surplus to be selling to other countries. So it'll be interesting how that turns around. I mentioned earlier, and you've talked about Germany and France as being the economic drivers of the European Union and the major participators in it. In 2008, when we saw when we saw financial distress in 2008, there were smaller countries in the European Union that were incredibly stressed. And I'm thinking of Ireland, and I'm thinking of Greece and Italy. What is the relationship, or how are they functioning inside the European Union? What is their relationship with France these days? Uh-oh, Alex, we lost you.
Oh, we'll probably get him back in a second.
He didn't like that question. You bring up Greece with somebody from France or Germany, and boy, they are out the door.
I just saw breaking news on X. Kamala wins something. I couldn't see the whole thing. I don't know if you guys want to try to find that real quick.
I wonder. Certainly not the nomination. That doesn't occur until the Democratic National Committee or convention. What could Kamala have won?
Oh,
Grant,
well,
as I go on about carbon credits and basing currency off of carbon credits with as opposed to Bitcoin, what do you think about that?
I think it all depends on the Paris Accord, right? If oh, we've got Alex back. Hold on a second.
Sorry.
Hey, no worries. I think we were talking about Greece, right?
Yeah, you're talking about Greece, but Greece is a bit different because you haven't talked about the other big partner that some of these countries have, which is and Ireland and Greece are different, but Greece definitely has a big partner that is China, and that they put a lot of projects with Greece, and they owe a lot of money to China. So for them, they were hit pretty hard, and most of these countries. I mean, some of these countries, it's like Greece had a big reliance on informal market. And so when the market crashed, I mean, it came out to light that there was not so many taxes. I mean, the government did not get pretty much any money. And so, I mean, the whole thing crashed because they could not support the infrastructures. They could not support anything because they didn't tax anything. And a lot of the work was not reported. For Ireland, that is quite different because Ireland is kind of a tax haven. Same. Well, it's not different so much. It's a tax haven for social networks. For example, that's the fiscal residence of Apple in Europe.
You know, it's interesting to see also us, at least in my personal life, or I've noticed many Americans headed to Greece for tourism. And the association with inflationary currencies and tourism they're correlated, because if you have a center of political power where money is generated and the market is imbalanced in a country's access to it, then people carry money in their wallets and they bring it, and we call it tourism. So Greece also, interesting to hear that they're indebted to China, and not surprising. What about Turkey? And Turkey is also sort of a strange bedfellow to be sleeping with in the European Union. What's the narrative in France with regards to Turkey these days?
Well, I think I won't say that ship has sailed, but that's pretty much it. I mean, there were talks for Turkey to join the European Union for a while, but I think it's pretty much abandoned right now. And with Erdogan in Turkey in power, I mean, it's not going to be possible, definitely. And Turkey is kind of playing its own game, and they have a reliance on a doctrine that is I don't know if you heard about this. This is a doctrine called in English that would be the blue country, something like that. The blue. I'm sorry. I don't have the exact translation, but it's mostly a doctrine that they want to implement regarding Turkey's expansion on the Mediterranean Sea. And it comes unfortunately, with big tensions with Greece, because if you were to take a look at a map, you would see that Greece, the water, the territory of Greece over the Mediterranean Sea is huge compared to Turkey, and so it's kind of been points of tensions, especially since there has been resources spotted and Turkey wants to exploit them. So we've got this kind of tension, and France has been supporting Greece on that front. But we got pretty bad at some point where we had actually Turkish warships accompanying explorative vessels to search for resources under the sea. So it's a big point of tension. It's a big point of tension on that point, and Turkey is definitely playing its own partition regarding the Russian-Ukrainian war. You got on one point this feeling that they want to be recognized as a regional power, and they've been engaging. With talks with both parties, with NATO because they're part of NATO, and with Russia. And you have a lot of Russian citizens that fled to Turkey actually as soon as the war started in order to avoid being drafted to the army. But at the same time, Turkey is the rival, is a clear rival to Russia regarding the Black Sea and regarding their position on the Black Sea. So Turkey is, I think, has definitely abandoned talks about joining the European Union, and it's playing its own partition. But it's playing its own partition regarding their own objectives, goals, I would say.
Absolutely, and it would seem an alliance with Russia with regards to their share, the amount of shoreline that they share and the access that they provide to the Black Sea. It's makes Russia a more crucial ally for Turkey. It's also interesting to think about how long they've been a part of NATO, and yet like how little part of the European identity Turkey comprises. And it would seem to me that maybe the strongest part of the European Union has been, on one level you have NATO, which is a defense organization. Another level you have the European Economic Community, which is about commerce. But then you have the Schengen Agreement and the open movement that allows for the citizens of the various European countries who've joined the European Union. But I know that's also brought a lot of political problems in France. When you think about France in the future, and with regards to, I don't know, open borders, open immigration in and out of France, do you think that holds, or is there going to be is that going to be something that changes with maybe the rise of the right or other political influences?
It's difficult to say. I mean, we got Schengen, which is quite difficult to change. I mean, it's not just people. It's merchandise. It's cars. It's everything. I mean, Schengen is. I mean, honestly, one of the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Honestly, and I do not say that just as a French citizen, but the ability that I have as a French citizen to go and work in Germany, go and live in Greece if I want to. I want to buy a house in Italy, that's possible. I want to work in Italy, that's possible. I mean, that is quite amazing. That is quite amazing. I'd say that. I think you're quite correct, and you pointed out the rise of the far right and the right as well. I mean, you could say the right. You can say the right. That truly believes that we need to we need to be to close our borders. But it's funny because it's always our external borders, not internal borders. So we want to keep Schengen, but we want to keep people out of the European Union, which is quite the opposite of what the European Union is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this concentrated of this successor of enlightenment, if I say, kind of like universal values, universal thing that could touch everybody. So it's supposed to export values outside, but in the meantime, we have this kind of debate on what the European Union should be. And you have more and more countries and more political parties, especially, as you said, in France, that are saying, well, we need to kind of maybe review our definition of what the European Union is and maybe focus on more its citizens first and then outside help afterwards. So regarding France, I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know. There's definitely a debate. And France is, I don't want to say any, I want to say 68, 69 million people, I think, around that number. And you got 11 million people that voted for the far right in the last election. So to me, that is, it illustrates definitely a change in the mentality of the people in France, with a lot of people saying immigration is enough, which I think you can relate, right?
Well, absolutely. That's the the narrative, whether Republican or Democratic, in the United States, is that immigration is a problem, and that at worst, people should, or on one end, we shouldn't accept immigrants at all, and at another end, they should only be white collar immigrants. Kind of blows my mind, because going back to, if I think about a long arc of history and political organization in the world, it seems that we're trying to get away from feudalist organizations, or feudalist political structure, and that's people being bound to the land and unable to move about. I think France gave us the word liberty, and that is the concept that we can move about by like free air. But it's also interesting to me when I look at cryptocurrencies or electronic cash, because it could, if we had more sophisticated accounting, you could see where, if somebody had only lived in your country for a year or two and had to pay steeper taxes because you had a currency system that was sophisticated enough to do that, to make an accounting for what their stake was in a country, how long they had been there, do they own land there, do they own a house there? That to me would ease some of the political fighting that we have, that's so black or white as to whether we want people in or want people out. Grant, whenever I saw Thomas Massey posted a question earlier today that Trump had promised a libertarian member of his cabinet. It seemed to me that the mark of a true libertarian is one that believes in liberty, and if liberty is moving about free with open borders, then it would make sense that the libertarian candidate that we would want would be in charge of Homeland Security. What do you think about that? Are those fighting words?
It's an interesting thought. I mean, it's the conundrum of libertarians, right? To even say, like, why would you ever be involved in government? Because if you kind of lean far enough in the direction of libertarian, you end up anarchist. So it's kind of like, I think I saw an interesting little post. It was like, yeah, we want to take over the government so we can leave everybody alone. It's kind of, how far do you even get with libertarian policies? Because mostly what you try to espouse inside of the libertarian ethos is that you want to just let people be and stop interfering and stuff. And I think, it's sort of when you get deeper into what would you actually want to interfere in, it's mitigating or trying to stop some of these large scale pollution or technological disasters that might occur as a result of how much our technological society has put power into the hands of a very small number of people who can wreak havoc upon things. I think about things like East Palestine and other types of ecological disasters, and to me that's kind of where libertarians would say, okay, that's the line that we've got to be careful on, because we're all for individual liberty and freedom, but it's when you have these corporations or small very technologically advanced individuals that can cause havoc by making a nuclear reactor in their garage. These things are possible, and it's that kind of stuff where you need to have some sort of a large government presence to be able to regulate certain types of substances or activities. Otherwise, you can cause, ecological disaster that you really can't recover from easily, or that you poison the environment for many. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought process, and I hadn't seen that post by Massey, but just thinking it through, I'd be surprised if any libertarian would even want that position. Maybe they'd take it so that they could try to bring down the power of it, and that'd be the extent of what they'd probably try to do with something like that, in my opinion.
Well, the litmus test for a true libertarian to me is always a question as to whether they believe in open borders or not, because I would say that most libertarians today would say that they do not. But I also think this is where the world begins to get interesting and change whenever you have these notions of cryptocurrencies, of accounting systems that are that don't rely on a centralized party and are verifiable, that we can use to provide nuance to, again, like what the staking is, how long somebody has been in an area. Welcome back, Alex. Grant and I
No,
sort
no,
of
I've been listening to what you're saying, and I was going to ask if just by what you're saying, and do you feel that this is why China is against Bitcoin?
I would say China is against, well, I would say China is against Bitcoin because one, they China was another country that the United States did not allow onto the dollar. And China
Wait a minute. I want to throw a thought on this. Just give me one
Okay.
second on this. I would say that China doesn't want Bitcoin because it allows for capital to leave China. I believe they've said that particularly, like, because it allows capital to flow outside the control of China.
Mm. You're mentioning the Great Firewall of China, that would make it something that they cannot control. And of course, we can speculate that Xi Jinping has been kind of centralizing everything lately, and they've been trying to control what they cannot control. So, yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, the
China,
great firewall is the information side, but this is the capital flight. Like, I think there's a strong capital flight that you've seen, at least in
No,
Canada.
no, it's not. It's not just information. I mean, it feels lately that there've been. I mean, if you take a look at the first mandate of Xi Jinping, and well, not the first mandate, I would say, but what he's been doing, with China, and especially what he's been doing with big companies inside of China. I mean, Evergrande. He's been trying to put orders and trying to control back the market in China. I mean, it's not just information to me.
well,
I mean,
so I mean, 100%. I think China both plays the game well and also has never bought into the understanding of the world of an endless supply of money, an endless supply of resources, or an endless supply of efficiency. And China was first was first introduced into the World Trade System through dependency on Spanish silver mined in Bolivia and Argentina, and then that silver was taken from them by the British, who were selling opium in the Opium Wars, and then China went through their own revolutions, and coming out of those revolutions, the United States intentionally kept China out of world trade, and China began to understand that, and again, like not buying into a notion of endless supply or endless resources or endless efficiency. When they took a look at what the United States was doing with the creation of dollars, and the doing so through creation of debt and monetizing that debt, they put themselves to work as the workers to accumulate United States dollars. But in doing so, I think they merely wanted to come to a point at which they had parity and credibility with the rest of the world to remake their own hegemony. And I think they're at that point today, especially in the wake of the 2008-2009 collapse and the alliance of the BRICS nations. And think also, we talk about BRICS in today's world as if it was an initiative of China, but that's not what it was. BRICS was originally an investment class for holders of United States dollars and investment portfolios of Americans in sending their dollars to these underdeveloped countries who were just coming onto the dollar system. And whenever we had a retraction of the amount of faith in the dollar, it was those countries that had the most expendable of American investment dollars that were hurt the worst. Go back and look at the political conflicts that occurred in Brazil and India and Russia. China fared the best out of all of them. But you also mentioned Evergrande. Even in China, like in understanding that the modernization of the world, like they both have had. Look at the state limits on the number of children that they had when the child policy in China, and even to this day, their population has been on a very different curve. But also, this China as a state has looked at the druthers of Americans. What does a wealthy American have? They have 2 houses, and a wealthier American has 3 houses. And so China, in order to accumulate the land of the larger part of China, relied on both the construction of cities and houses, and a creation of a surplus of housing to sell to landowners in eastern China for and that, I would say, was their policy towards modernizing and urbanizing their entire country. And they did so with a lot less conflict than we saw in certainly the United States. So I think China is a very, very interesting player. And I know that the narrative in the United States is one of China is our enemy and be wary of China. But China has sought to create their own trade network, their Belt and Road Initiative. And they have not relied on the positioning of one great enemy, like the United States seems to require in order to perpetuate the use of our dollar around the world.
Well, it does feel like the U.S. is trying to fight China with actually the same propaganda that they used against the USSR. Does feel that way.
A lot of our propaganda against China also comes from the Epoch Times, and I don't know if you have the Epoch Times in France, but it's very interesting that it purports to be a conservative American viewpoint, but really what it is I'd say almost a Protestant, going back to religion and how Protestantism and the notion of an emergent religious order destabilized that of top-down order. But the Falun Gong is a very anti-CCP movement in China, and they have very they have used American media in English and under the guise of being a conservative voice to put forth their policy goals and to demonize the CCP in China. And it's very interesting to me to hear so many politicians in the United States cry havoc and point to TikTok and Huawei and Chinese commerce whenever they are playing the game according to the rules established by the United States. But when you ask them about the Epoch Times and what they think about a Chinese a faction of Chinese society disseminating a narrative of political opinion in the United States, they clasp their hands and demur. And part of it is because they agree with it. And again, we have a disgusting reliance on one great enemy in the United States.
Yeah, it does. It does feel that way sometimes. I do recommend. There's a website that talks about what's happening in China that I always felt that was a great source of information. If you guys are interested, it's East is Red. If you find it, I always felt that was a great source of information regarding what's happening in China. They talk about lots about things that are not common to a lot of people, because as we talk about China, I mean, there is one thing that is that is to be mentioned, I think, and be it American politicians or even French politicians, we don't know China. We don't know China that well. I mean, it's one thing to mention the enemy. It's one thing to say, oh, well, we're going to fight against them. But it's another thing to actually understand the culture. And it's not easy. It's not easy because we don't know China. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, of course, I read a lot and I study a lot and I'm trying to understand. But we don't know that much about the history. We don't know that much about inside the country, what it feels like, what the people think, the different factions, the different movement. We see their peplums where you got 5,000 people voting for one guy, and I said, oh well, they look united, but we don't know much about the different factions inside their parliaments, inside their parties. So it's quite difficult sometimes to I feel to.
I'll definitely add that to my bookmarks and follow it. I read or I at least scan the SCMP, the South China Morning Post, which I believe is based out of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I've long followed the SCMP for sort of outside American news with regards to China, but that's still very slanted with regards to a Western vantage of Western values. When I think about the strength of monies, because we've talked about backing monies by gold or silver or Bitcoin or carbon, but the chairman of the Federal Reserve said something recently that I've taken to heart. And when questioned about the strength of the dollar by senators in the United States Congress, his response over and over and over was, integrity is what backs the American dollar. And I I think that's true for every country, and I don't know that that we've led with a lot of integrity. Also, going back to Francis calling out the United States the exorbitant privilege of the dollar over and over and over. And so I'm very wary of accepting so the traditional line with regards to American commerce in China. You know, even going back to Nixon, who in the wake of his admission of the lies that the United States had, or the the lie that the United States had put forth with regards to how many dollars that we had printed and disseminated through the world, Nixon also had opened up trade with China. And it's so very fascinating that we remember Nixon as listening into his political opponents instead of admitting that the United States had been lying, instead of the integrity that he displayed internationally when push came to shove, both with regards to China and France.
You know, it's we got a lot of talks about the fact that the dollar is gonna, you know, there are people that countries that are looking to get away from the dollar, to not be so much dependent. And I think there's definitely a growing movement regarding that. But I would say that the dollar still holds a very dominant position, and it's going to hold it for a very long time. And I think that the main fact is that the dollar is. You talked about the integrity, but you questioned the integrity of maybe the US on that front. But again, the US is something that we know. China, regarding its politics and regarding the way it deals with commerce, and it deals with companies that are, that set up shop in China. I don't want to say integrity is not the first word that comes to my mind. I mean, I'd say that China has definitely been playing with its own rules and did not abide so much. So I don't know how you translate with the yuan, and how it the faith that people have it definitely across the globe. But I'd say, yeah, the dollar still has some good days to live. Maybe not forever, maybe not in 100 years from now, but definitely over the next 20 years. And we understand that. I personally wish I wish the euro was a bit stronger, but it's the European Union is in a bit of a bind right now. We don't know and which way to go. I think there are still people that are trying to make it. So the European Union is more a confederate union, and not so much federation. But I don't know. It's too soon to tell how it's going to go. I feel like the euro could have been a rival to the dollar because of the way some of the politicians inside the European Union are trying to balance the US and China, trying to be the middle ground between the two. So who knows? Who knows where that's going to go? But I think you both are correct. I think the European, the digital currencies are maybe the way of the future. It's going to be very interesting to see how China is going to react if, for example, Donald Trump is elected and pushes forward more laws in favor of Bitcoin. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I think just
hey, wait, Lucas, on that, I think we got to wrap the show because I actually got.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. But Alex, loved having you on the show and talking about all the things. And like I said, hopefully you can stop back again soon.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely, Alex. I was going to turn to the World Bank and the IMF and France perceptions of that, and ask you about Argentina, but I'll just warn you about those questions for a future conversation. How about that?
That works. Well, thank you for having me. That's been a blast, honestly. I do a lot enjoy talking about that a lot, and yeah, definitely would like to come back. Yeah.
All right, sounds great. Well, we'll catch you guys all on the show on Monday. We'll talk soon.
All right. Yeah.
All right. See you, Grant. Bye, everyone.